Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Christopher Nye, Senior Editor at Your Overseas Home. Today, we will be chatting with both Antonio Torres and also Camilla Brodersen from Luxton Legal about the legal process when buying your property in Spain. It's great to have you all with us, whether you're live or you're catching up on demand. We only have 30 minutes and Camilla and Antonio have a presentation, and then we're going to have there should be plenty of time to put your questions to the pair. So just type them into the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. We're going to try to focus on the buying process, and but I've no doubt that we will get into residency as well, and also tax. So chuck in your questions, and we'll see if we can get them answered in time. If you need a reminder of anything discussed today, or you want to share this with family or friends, a replay will be available on your Overseas Home website to watch at your leisure. And of course, we'll send you the content, the contact details of Luxton Legal, so you can contact Antonio and Camilla directly and get your questions answered. And I hope you'll use them for your amazing purchase in Spain. So, Antonio and Camilla, if you could introduce yourselves and do your presentation and answer the question: do you need to be a resident to buy a property in Spain? Thank you.
Well, so thank you very much, Chris, for the introduction, and thank you for hosting this webinar. As Chris mentioned, we have prepared a presentation, but before we would like to introduce ourselves so that you can know a bit more about Camilla and I. So, well, this is my colleague Camilla Brodersen, and I'm Antonio Torres. We are both registered lawyers in Spain. I've been working on the real estate area over the last 8 years, and my colleague Camilla has been working on the corporate and real estate area over the last 6 years. And back in 2021, we decided to establish our law firm. It's called Luxton Legal, so we are both partners. And we are focused on foreign investment. So what we do is help foreigners that wish to buy properties in Spain. And we help throughout the whole process, as we understand that it's not just buying the properties, but also is a change on your life for most of you. So what we try to provide is a 360 service covering everything and not just the purchase of the property. So now, Camilla, if you want to take over the presentation so that you can introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Antonio, for the introduction. And thank you all of you for being here, and for the ones that will be watching later as well. We hope you find this information useful. And going back to Chris' questions, we'll just cut to chase and answer the big question today. That is, do you need to be a resident to buy a property in Spain? And the answer is no. That's why we're here. So I'll go over the agenda for today. So first of all, Antonio gave a brief introduction about who we are and what we do. Then we will go over the property acquisition process. Then we will look into the taxes, which is something that all of us are really interested in. And then we'll give some insights for this year, 2023, for example, about the prices and places to buy properties, and about forecast of what we think will happen in the real estate market. And by the end, hopefully, we can end with some questions and answers that might come up after watching this session. Okay, so this is us, as Antonio already said, so I'll just pass this on quickly. Something important to mention here is that our idea is to be your point of contact in Spain, so that we can assist you with anything you may need regarding to your purchase or the whole relocation process in Spain. As Antonio was saying, it's more than just buying a property, but all that entails, and it has also an emotional component to it. So we are aware of that. We have worked in the business for a couple of years. I myself am an expat, so we know there are a lot of things there bigger than buying the property itself. So, okay, before starting with the process, I understand some of you are just thinking about buying a property in Spain or moving to Spain. Some of you are in the very initial stages, but some of you probably already are looking at properties or planning trips to come to Spain. So what is the first thing you would have to keep in mind before signing anything or putting down an offer? So the first thing you would need to do is to obtain an EIN number, which is the foreigner's identification number, and open a Spanish bank account. That although it's not mandatory, it's highly recommended to have one for the moment of the purchase itself, because it will make the process very much straightforward and easy. Okay, so the first step, once you have looked at the property that you would like to buy, the thing you'll need to do is to submit an offer and make a deposit so that the realtor or the seller takes the property off the market. Usually the deposit here in Spain, it's around 3,000 euros. It might depend, but that's the standard fee the realtors or the seller ask for. Once you have reserved the property, they will ask you to sign the ARAS agreement. The ARAS agreement, it's a private purchase contract. So that contract is very important because there it's where all the terms and conditions of the property of the purchase are established. So in this case, at the moment of signing, a down payment will be required. It's usually around the 10%, including what you put on as a down payment. Here in Spain, the purchase deed is signed at the notary public. There's no time frame on when to sign it after signing the purchase agreement. However, it's something in most cases you will need to negotiate with the seller in order to get at the perfect date to be ordered to sign it. This is signed at the public notary because you'll have to grant a public deed. This is the moment when the transmission of the property takes place. Last but not least, tax settlements. You have to determine which taxes are applicable to the purchase. So in Spain, there are a lot of autonomous communities. Most taxes depend on where the property is located. So something important to have in mind is the type of the taxes that you will need to pay, because also it's different if you buy, for example, a new built property, or a second-hand property. After the property has been purchased, the deed has to be registered at the land registry. This is not compulsory. However, we as lawyers recommended it because it accredits before third parties the ownership of the property. Also, if it has any encumbrances or so on. So although it's not mandatory, it's something that almost all the people here in Spain do. Once a property purchase has been finalized, you will need to communicate to certain administrations such as town halls, the cadastral registry, or probably the community of neighbors if you're acquiring a flat, of the change of ownership. And the same thing will need to be done in case for changing the ownership of the different suppliers, such as water, electricity, and well, if it's a new property, you will need to hire them. So here in Spain, you know, there's a lot of bureaucracy. So this is something that you should have keep in mind as well, because something so simple might take a lot of time. Now I'm getting into the taxes, which is something that most of you are interested in. As I previously mentioned, the taxes depend on the type of property. So I'll start with new build properties. New build properties is easy in the sense that there is a flat tax rate in all of Spain, which is the 10% of the purchase price. So what is considered a new build home? A new build home is one that is purchased from the developer after the construction of the property. However, it's important to know that there are many properties that have been completely refurbished that if they meet certain requirements, they can be considered as well as a new build property. So they will be taxed on the 10%. Now, also at the moment that you sign the deed at the notary, another tax comes up, which is a tax on notarial acts, which is the AJD, which is in Spain, Actos Jurídicos Documentados. And that's between the 0.5 and the 1.5 of the purchase price. That tax depends on where the property is located, so it's determined regionally. Now I'll get into the most known tax in Spain, which is at the moment of buying properties of secondhand, which is the ITP, also known as the transfer tax. That tax is different depending on the area where the property is located. So here you can see in the map how it ranges from 6% in Madrid, for example, to even 11.5% in places such as the Balearic Islands. In some communities, for example, as the Balearic Islands, the tax rate might be progressive, depending on the value of the property. So that's kind of a short insight of how the purchase property taxes work at the moment of buying. Note that after you buy the property, you'll have further tax obligations. However, these are the ones that you'll see first at the moment that you purchase. Then I'll get to Antonio so he can explain more about the numbers, the statistics, and information that we think you will find insightful.
Yeah, well, thank you, Camilla, for the words. So we thought when preparing this presentation that was going to be interesting, sharing some insights on the Spanish real estate market so that you could understand the bigger picture of the Spanish market. So, for example, these statistics have been prepared just for the last quarter of 2022. So, as you may see, the average price last quarter was 1,951 euros per square meter. In second-hand property, the average price was 1,910, and in new housing, it's a bit more. It was 2,144 euros per square meter. Of course, this depends on the area, but usually and typically, a new housing has a higher price than a second-hand property. What kind of properties a typical purchaser is looking for? So the main property that the purchaser looks for is for a flat. It's not a single property or an attached property. It's a flat over 80 square meters. So as you may see, almost 50% of the purchasers carried out on the last quarter were looking for flats for almost 80 to 100 square meters. And then you as foreigners may be willing about if you can opt as well for a mortgage. So the answer is yes. So on the last quarter, the average rates offered by the Spanish banks was 2.68%. Of course, as you may know, the European Central Bank has risen these rates. So nowadays, I guess that you could get something for over 3.5%, more or less. And as there is it's a difference between the resident and non-resident in relation to the mortgages, because for residents, the banks or the entities usually you could get up to an 80% of the value of the property, and for non-residents, so for foreigners, it's usually up to 60%, although it could be increased if you have a good rate. So moving on, well, some regions in where the highest prices were founded last quarter, so are the Balearic Islands, Madrid, Basque Region, and Catalonia. This is, well, not surprising, because as you may see in the next slides, is where most people buy. So as you may see, the highest number of sales are for the last quarter were in Andalusia, Valencia, and Catalonia. This includes residents and non-residents. But moving forward on the next slide, on the demographics, you may see that in relation to foreign investment, almost 15% of the purchases carried out on the last quarter were performed by foreigners. So this 14.71% is the second highest result in the historical series. The best result was actually in the third quarter of 2022. So there is an increase on foreign demand, as you may see. And by citizenship, by nationalities, on top, we have the British citizens, then Germans and French. This is just, again, for the last quarter, but it's typical or usual that the British are on top of the foreign market. And where are the regions in where the foreigners usually buy? So as you may see, well, here in the slide, there are the Balearic Islands, Valencia region, the Canary Islands, Murcia, Catalonia, and Andalusia. This is nothing surprising because it's where the people usually want to live, because as we mentioned previously, it's not just buying a property, but is looking for life quality, for good weather. So those are the areas in where foreigners most invest. And by citizenship, we have also prepared some information. If you check on the slide, for example, the British citizens, where they usually buy the most, it's in Andalusia and the Valencia region. So the areas with the darkest color are the ones that most of the investment have taken place. So in the United Kingdom, as I mentioned, it's Andalusia and Valencia. For example, for the Germans, it's Catalonia, Balearic Islands, and Andalusia. For the French citizens, it's Catalonia, mostly because it's nearby France. And the Belgium, Belgians mostly invest in the Valencia region. So as you may see, there is a pattern that almost all the foreigners look to invest in all these regions because of the weather and of the life quality, and usually you can find there is the lifestyle. It's cheaper than other regions in Spain. And last but not least, we have prepared a forecast for 2023. And you may, if you have been following up the news or the social media, and they're talking about that prices are going to decrease. So they have been saying this over the last 2 years, but in our opinion, and well, this is just our opinion, we think that the market is gonna, if not increase, it's gonna maintain the prices, because as you may see, for example, the total stock for sale in January 2023, and by stock I mean the properties on the market in Spain, it's 4.6%, and it has decreased over the last year. So for example, in 2020 it was 5.1% the stock for sale, so it has decreased. But on the contrary, the demand has increased. In January 2023, for example, you get 2.1 leads on average per advertising, and back in December 2022 it was 1.9. So this means, and according to the data, that there is a lot of demand, but the stock for sale has been decreasing. So in our opinion, I mean, if you're expecting the prices to fall, we'll have to see, of course, with this that the access with the mortgages are being because of the European Central Bank has raised the interest rate, may be more difficult to get a mortgage. But in our opinion, or at least according to the data, prices will maintain. So that's almost everything that we wanted to share. For us, I mean, it's a pleasure assisting you. As we mentioned, we are focused on foreign investment, and we will be glad to help you with anything that you need. Now we will pass on to questions and answers. We've seen that there are some questions that we can go over them. So
okay, fantastic presentation. I'm gonna steal your information for some articles, I can tell you. Really interesting. Just to reiterate, you are based in you cover all of Spain. So it's best to contact you at a very early stage so you can structure the process, from the start. It isn't something that you want to do when you made an offer. Then think, oh, quick, lawyer, we should call you first.
Yes, indeed. And we always recommend our clients to contact us as soon as possible, because as Camilla mentioned, for example, there are certain administrative requirements that needs to be covered before you buy the purchase, which would be, for example, the Spanish NI number or opening a bank account. And these things take some time. So it's better to be prepared with all of this before you decide to purchase the property.
Okay.
Also, you may notice that once, for example, you submit the offer, the process goes very quickly. So you might find yourself in a position where the buyer or the realtor is pressuring you to move forward with the sale, with the purchase, and you don't have the bank account and you don't have the NIE number. And in Spain, there's a lot of bureaucracy, these are very straightforward, let's say, things to do, but they take time here because probably the immigration office doesn't have enough appointments or so on. So that it's why it's better to have everything prepared once you're starting to look at properties, or even before, if possible, because it's something you will need at some point. So it's better to have it sooner than later.
Right, okay. I'm just going to launch into some of the questions that our readers have asked.
Okay.
So one from Harry, which is it best to get residency before you buy the property, or do you buy the property first? What happens if you buy and then you don't get residency?
Well, I mean, actually, it doesn't matter if you buy first and then you apply for the residency. So it can be done either way around. It usually helps for the residency, for permit, for the visa, if you already have a property, because you can show that you have a place where you would be living in. But I mean, you can apply first for the residence and then buy the property. It doesn't matter at all. What happens if you buy the property and then you don't get the residence? So you will be able to stay in Spain up to 90 days through the Schengen visa. But then, I mean, we could look for other options, because there are different visa options. We have the non-lucrative visa, the newly come digital nomad visa, also the golden visa on real estate. If you invest more than 500,000 euros in a property, you get residency and working permit. So if you don't get the visa, once you apply for it, there are other options and other visas that you could apply depending on the case. But I mean, if you don't want to live in Spain and you just want to spend some time in Spain, you would be able even without having a residency visa.
Yes. So just to reiterate the question at the start of the thing, you do not have to have residency to buy in Spain. Buying property was unconnected with Brexit,
Right.
and you can continue to buy in Spain. But in that initial consultation with you, you can give people an idea of whether they're likely to get a visa. So if they've got a criminal record, or they don't have any income, then clearly that would be a problem. But you can advise all that before they buy a property.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So we're getting on to late February, and British people are getting thoroughly fed up with the winter. So how soon do you think we could be owning in Spain? How long does the purchase process take?
Okay, well, that's a good question. There's no legal deadline to purchase a property, so it all depends on the agreement that you have with the seller. Usually, and on average, would be, I would say, like around a month. But if you need a mortgage, it will take a bit more. And that's something that you have to take into account when signing the Arras agreement that Camilla mentioned, this 10% down payment. In this contract is where you establish all the terms and conditions for the purchase completion. So let's say that you need some time to deal with the mortgage or to get all of the funds that you need for the property purchase. thus that's something that you take into account in the contract. So you can establish, I mean, it usually is 1 month, but it can take up to 3-6 months depending on the buyer position. What we usually do in advance and before signing anything is make a due diligence on the property that the buyer and our clients want to buy, just to make sure that the property they are buying is according to the local regulations and that there are no red flags or any issue that may make them withdraw from the purchase. And this usually takes like 1 week to 10 days to carry out the whole due diligence. So to sum up this question, I would say usually takes like a month and a half, but if you need a mortgage, it will take some more time, like 2 months, 2.5.
We can hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I knew I'd do that once. So, but other than the length of time, are there any other implications of requiring a mortgage on your Spanish property? Because I know that with residency you require with a visa you need quite a high income. So I'm thinking perhaps if you keep some of that money in the bank and get a mortgage, then having that money in the bank will help with your visa application.
Well, it depends on the type of visa that you apply for, because each visa has different, let's say, economic requirements.
Okay, sure.
So, and also each consulate is can ask for different ways of, for example, providing such economic information. For example, I'm thinking about the non-lucrative visa that they ask about. It's 2,400 euro per month for the main applicant. However, it's not as straightforward as just showing up with a bank statement and saying, look, I have this money, because certain consulates, they want to see this income, for example, coming from passive income from rents or something like that. Others are just fine with the bank statements from the past year. So it's really up to the consulate, the way of submitting the proof of economic means. That it's only, for example, an example of the non-lucrative visa. But the other type of visas are more or less the same, in the sense that when they require for economic information, you'll have to look in the way that it should be presented. In some cases, probably a work contract in Spain will be sufficient, or so on. So it's something to look into detail, case by case.
Okay, great. I think you've answered Alan's question there. He asked how much income you need for residency. It's 2,400 a month. So that's
a non-lucrative for the main applicant. Okay. And that it's actually, it changes every year. So that's the value for 2020-23 this year.
Okay. I was a little bit concerned about when you said that you can be buying a second-hand property, but certain things put it into the new build category. Can you give us some more information on that? Because presumably, if you find the house that you love and you're budgeting on one level of tax, and suddenly you find that, I don't know, there's some building work or something that's put it into the new build category. So can you give me more details on that? What should we be beware of?
Yeah, well, that's something that we actually carry out on the due diligence, just to check if, let's say that it's a second-hand property, but that has been completely refurbished. So we'll have to check out what kind of refurbishment the seller has done, because depending on the refurbishment, for example, if it has been a structural refurbishment, then it would be considered by the tax agency as a new build property. So it will go on the VAT rather than the transfer tax. So it would be, let's say that you want to buy in Madrid. So instead of paying 6% for a second-hand property, you will pay 10% because it would be considered a new build property. No? So that's something that is taken into account by us when performing the due diligence, just checking what kind of refurbishment has been made on the property, just to make sure that the property is subject to one tax or another. So it mostly depends on the kind of refurbishment. If it's structural, for sure, and depending on the budget used for the refurbishment, it may also be considered a new build property. So that's something important, because when you make your own budget for the purchase of a property, in order to avoid surprises when making the payment, it's important to know and have an estimate on how much you will need to spend on taxes.
Sure. Okay. I know we're supposed to have finished now, but we've got 6 great questions coming in. I hope you can hang around for 5 minutes more, just to answer a few more. Okay, Sharon is asking, what are solicitors' costs?
What? Sorry, can you repeat it?
What are the legal costs? What should we budget for you, basically, and the notary and what have you?
Okay, yeah. So we usually, when purchasing a property, divide our services into 2. And first one is for the purchase of the property, and in parallel, the visa, because as we know, most of the clients want to move to Spain. Some others just want to invest. So if on the purchase, we usually charge a fee based on the purchase price of the property, which can go from 0.6% to 1.5% of the property, depending on the value. So let's say, from 0.6 to 1.5, and more or less that's our budget. And for the visas, it depends on what kind of visa you want to apply. For a non-lucrative or for a golden visa, or for a digital nomad, it depends on how many members of the family needs to come to Spain. So we do it that part more tailor-made, so it depends on the kind of visa.
Okay. Right, John is coming out to Spain next week, and he wants to know if he could just go into a bank account and open an account. And is there a minimum amount he would need to open an account?
Well, there is no minimum amount to open an account. What they will do for John is open a non-resident account, which it has attached some fees rather than opening a resident bank account. Okay, but what they will request from John is to provide some personal information in order to open the bank account. So they usually request, for example, the tax returns, the last 3 payrolls, the bank movements in his country of residence, and his tax ID number. So there are 13 documents. So it depends on the bank, but it's not that quite straightforward. However, if John wants to contact us afterwards, we can introduce him to some bank managers that we were with, and they don't request, for example, a short translation of the documents into Spanish, because it might happen that he may go to any branch and they start requesting everything short translated and apostille, which is an issue because he has to spend a lot of money just translating the documents. So
yeah, unfortunately here in Spain, I like to say that banking, it's a bit like a Russian roulette, in the sense that it really depends on the manager or the person that's in the bank that day, because in the same bank, probably in the same branch, one person may ask you for certain information and others for others. So we recommend to take everything and more, and hopefully if they don't ask for anything, you're fine, instead of going with less information and they requiring additional things. But as Antonio said, we have certain contacts at different banks that we know for sure, at least, that they don't require the translation part, which sometimes it's money to invest, and it's probably something that you won't use for further purposes. So you can maybe save up on that.
But when you're in the notary's office, and you're paying, the money doesn't go through a Spanish account, does it? I know that Smart, who sponsor our events, they Smart Currency, the money just goes straight into the over to the vendor or by the lawyer. So the money doesn't go into a Spanish account and then come out. I believe, and presumably, who organises that process in the notary's office? Would that be you, or would that be the estate agent?
Yeah, it would be us, as the buyer here in Spain has the right to choose the notary. So if the buyer is our clients, we choose the notaries that we usually work with. I mean, the notary, it's a third party, so it's neutral. But eventually, if you get along with some notaries, it's easier in order to prepare the purchase deed. And that's something that we will be doing. We will be contacting the notaries, drafting the purchase deeds, and making sure that the deed is correct and in order. And for sure, for the completion, when the time comes, if the client cannot be in Spain, we can also intervene through a power of attorney, so that with that power of attorney, we will have authorities to proceed with the transfer, with the wire transfer of the remaining purchase price, and signing the purchase deed, so that we can intervene on the client's behalf if he or she cannot be in Spain while carrying out the transfer of the property.
Another way, as you were saying, that it's recommended to have the bank account in Spain for the moment of, let's say, paying the property, is because one way that it's still done here in Spain, it's paying via check. So we get the check beforehand, so it's paid at the moment of completion of the deed. Because sometimes if the transfer comes from an international account or directly from the Spanish account, it has to go via the Bank of Spain, and usually it causes some trouble. So you might be there left at the notary for hours waiting for the transaction to be completed, because it has to be done at the time. And then for the person that buys, of course, he wouldn't want to send the transfer before signing. So that might cause some issues. So that's one of the reasons why it's advisable to have the bank account before the purchase, and because afterwards, just for normal stuff such as paying electricity and water, you won't be able, for example, to pay certain things from international bank accounts. So that's basically the reason for all of it.
Okay, fantastic. For those of us like me who've been in writing about international property for the last 20 years, we always say it's so important to get a really good independent lawyer right from the start, so you know that the process is all going to go through smoothly. So we really do recommend that you get in touch with Luxton Legal directly to discuss your requirements in detail. Thank you to all our viewers for watching this session. We wish you the very best in your move overseas. We have all sorts of resources available on our website to help with your buying journey, guides, other video recordings. Do look at our website. And most importantly, we would also like to invite you to our virtual event, where we spend all day talking about these things. I think there's a link come up on your screen. You just click there, and you can just fill in the form. And that's on the 25th of March. You'll remember it's because it's the day before the clocks go forwards, I think, forwards, and it gets lighter in the evenings. So do come along to our virtual event on the 25th, and you can spend all day speaking to lawyers and estate agents and looking at amazing properties and making those connections with people like Antonio and Camilla. So thank you very much, both of you, and thank you for the viewers who've tuned in, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all for joining. Hope this was insightful.
Thank you. Feel free to contact us.
Okay, bye-bye.